All right, so we're continuing our series moment by moment. Today we're going to talk about God and listening, the moments of listening. One wonderful verse on this is Philippians 4:6, when it says, "Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for what He's done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything you can understand." Isn't it interesting how a verse like this with so much promise can yield really two distinct feelings, and even Christians? One reads this and finds peace, that don't worry, ask God. And others say, I've been asking God, but there's nothing. He's not listening. Well, it reminded me of a story I heard recently about General Jim Stockdale. If you don't know him, that's okay. He was actually one of the highest ranking prisoners of war at the Hanoi Hilton. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 8 years. He was brutally beaten by his captors over 20 times. And yet, in the end, he survived. He was rescued. He got to go home. Years later in the 90s, he was actually a vice president candidate with Ross Perot. And so Jim Collins wrote a book, and he asked Admiral Stockdale, how did you make it? How did you keep on those 8 years through all those beatings? He said, I never lost faith in the end of the story. As a matter of fact, he went on to say, you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. He actually went on to talk about the people that didn't make it. He said those are the people that were optimists, that said we'll be out by Christmas, we'll be out by Easter. And Christmas and Easter came, and they lost faith, and they actually died of a broken heart. You know, sometimes we get this with our prayer life, with God. We pray hard, and we think, God, surely He's going to listen, and He's going to do it. And when we don't see the effects of that, we think He doesn't hear. No, Philippians just said, God hears us. And so, where is that? Where is that struggle back and forth of knowing God listens? Well, it's just like Admiral Stockdale said, you have to never confuse the faith that you will prevail. You'll never confuse that God's plan will prevail. But yet understand that we live in a world with sin and struggle. And so just because God doesn't do it on your time frame doesn't mean He's not listening, doesn't mean He's not always there. As a matter of fact, James talks about it, the brother of Jesus, in his first book. And he says, dear brothers and sisters, when trouble comes your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that your faith is tested and your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, it will be perfectly complete, not needing anything. Then he goes on and says, if you need wisdom, ask God. Need wisdom about what? Well, need wisdom about understanding your struggles and how it benefits. Understand that God's listening through your struggles. He's there to talk. But ultimately, His will prevail through your struggles. One of the verses that we like to talk about when it comes to our plans is in Jeremiah 29. And we love verse 11. Verse 11 says this, For I know the plans I have for you, plans for good and not for disaster, plans to give you a future and hope. We miss 10 and 12 a lot in this. When it says, you will be in Babylon for 70 years. For 70 years you'll struggle. For 70 years you will not see me, is basically what he's saying here. But he says, then I will come for you, and the good things I have promised, and I will bring you home again. For I have plans for you. For not for disaster, but for good, to give you hope in a future. When you pray, I will listen. And if you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. So, is God listening? Sure. His Bible says it all the time. But we have to come to the realization of the two facts. And once we realize that God's plan will reveal, no matter through our struggles, that God's always listening in those struggles, then finally we can come to that peace that Philippians is talking about.